Hi, Daniel Martin here with Wehrly Group. We'll touch a little bit today on IRAs. Basically, I'm going to give you all the information you never wanted to know. Of course, that's a little silliness there. A lot of folks have IRAs and 401ks and 501s and all these different fun things of non-qualified money. All they were ever taught was you just put it in, you let it grow, and when you retire, you got all the money you'd ever want to need. Well, sometimes it works that way, sometimes it don't. So today we're going to touch a little bit so you can understand the difference of traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, what all this different stuff means. And just kind of give you a little bit of insight so you have a little better understanding of what you have and what may be best for you to do when it comes to determining the outcome of your retirement money as you head into retirement. During the growing phase, you know, when you're gathering it and all that, do while you're working, it seems easy. But if you take some steps ahead of time, it can make it a whole lot better for you whenever you get down the road. So let's kind of start a little bit. First, I want to ask you if you know what IRA stands for. Most folks thinks it stands for Individual Retirement Account. Well, as you can see here on publication 590 from the Department of Treasury, the IRS, it's actually Individual Retirement Arrangement, not account. You have an account that holds your IRA money, but the fun part is that you have an arrangement. Now, what most folks don't understand is that arrangement is a partnership with the government. You decided long ago, whether you wanted to or not, willingly or not, to enter into a partnership with the government when you decide to start using qualified savings. In other words, you're putting that money back without paying any tax on it while you're working, just so that you can pay the tax on all of it when it comes out on the other end. Well, part of that arrangement is that you're growing their money with your money. So what that means is when it all comes down to it, they get to tell you when to take that money out, how much you have to take it out, different things like that. So they also get to arrange how much tax you get to pay on that, and how big the penalty is in case you have to get into it early, and so forth and so on. So a lot of folks don't realize that they have that arrangement made whenever they start down the road with their 401ks or TSPs or whatever it may be, whoever you work for. It all is qualified money. I suggest that you do look up this publication, 590. It's kind of a short read if you have qualified money, just so you can familiarize yourself with a little more than what I'm going to explain here today, and that might help you answer some questions in the future. Unfortunately, most people get that information from their co-worker or their neighbor or somebody else who got it from their co-worker or their neighbor or somebody else, and a lot of times when we come to find out that the information isn't quite on par. I've had the silly things, and if this is you, don't take offense to it, but I've had folks that tell me that all they have to do is wait till they're 59 and a half, and then they don't have to pay taxes on that money anymore, which is really wrong. You always have to pay the tax on that money when it comes out. 59 and a half is when you're allowed to take it out without penalty. So don't get confused on all this. Take your time, read over this, and you might get a little better understanding. Of course, you can always call us or touch base with us if there's anything in there that you don't understand. We'll be glad to help you out. That's part of getting you on your path to success in your retirement, right? So, what is an IRA? Well, again, it's an individual retirement arrangement. It's a tax-favored personal savings arrangement, which allows you to set aside money for the retirement. There are several different types of IRAs, including traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. You can set up an IRA at a bank, at an insurance company, or other financial institution. Now, this is the definition straight from the IRS, just so you get a true understanding of what it is. This is what they're going to take. Now, to break that down a little further, a traditional IRA, basically, this is where you may be able to deduct some of all your contributions of your traditional IRA. In other words, you don't have to pay the tax on it as you're putting it away normally, as long as you qualify and things like that. We'll go over that a little bit more later. You may also be eligible for a tax credit equal to a percentage of your contribution. So it may almost be a dollar for dollar write-off in some cases, which is good. The amounts of your traditional IRA, including earnings, right, generally aren't taxable until they're distributed to you, right? It's called a distribution. When you take the money out and put it in your pocket, that's normally when you have to pay the tax on that. And of course, IRAs can't be owned jointly because it's an individual retirement arrangement. So you can't own half and your wife own half. Now, if you were to pass away, your half would then pass on to your wife if that's what you wanted, or to somebody else. But jointly, you never own an IRA, right? That's an individual, one person, right? However, many amounts remaining in your IRA upon your death will be paid out to your beneficiaries or their beneficiaries, or so forth and so on. So I understand that it is an individual thing. We have folks that think that, well, you know, I have an IRA, so my wife has an IRA. Well, no. If your wife doesn't work, but you work, and we'll talk about this in contributions in a little while, but she may be eligible to contribute to her own IRA based off of you, but it would be her account, not your account, right? So, next thing we have is a Roth IRA. Excuse me. A Roth IRA differs from traditional in several ways. Of course, the most important part is contributions to a Roth are never deductible. In other words, if I put money straight into a Roth account, I have to qualify to be able to do it, so forth and so on. But that money I cannot deduct from my tax return. What that means, I'm going to pay the tax, I'm going to pay the piper, I'm not going to get any break. The break's going to be down the road. That's what we're going to see here. But the qualified distributions or distributions that are taken in return of the contributions aren't subject to tax, right? You never have to pay tax on that money again. To be in a Roth IRA account or an annuity must be designed as a Roth IRA when it is set up. Of course, there's other publications that talk about that a little further, but basically in a nutshell, with a Roth IRA, you can do two things. You can contribute or you can convert, but the money that goes in, taxes are paid, and it's set up to grow. Now, there's a 5-year timeline from the time of your first Roth before you can pull money back out of this thing. It falls under a lot of the same qualifications as far as timelines and stuff like that, because it is still a IRA, so it's still qualified money. It's just the difference is, if you're stuffing it away early in life, you teach your kids to put it in whenever they're 15, 16, 17 years old and they first start working, they could real easily have $1 million that they don't have to pay tax on by the time they get up to retirement years, because they're going to put in a couple $100,000 over that time. It's going to grow, and every penny that it grows will never ever be taxed again. Again, we've had folks that have told us, well, that's ridiculous. I understand that you can put it in, and the money you put in, you never have to pay tax on again, but the growth in that's certainly going to be taxable. Well, I'm here to tell you that is wrong. Straight out of IRS code, that is wrong. You never have to pay tax on that money again. This is what all your congressmen have. Give you a little hint here. If you want to know how they came up with the word Roth, there was a senator named William B. Roth that introduced this legislation that made it able to do that. All your congressmen and senators have Roths, so they're going to retire without having to pay taxes. I suggest you look into one if you haven't and see if it'll work for you. In most cases it will, not always, but in a lot of cases it will. But it can for sure make your life a whole lot simpler in retirement if you have at least some Roth money, okay? So now we're going to get into funding an IRA. Again, we have two different methods of funding an IRA. We can either do a contribution. Those are limited sometimes based off of your earnings and different other factors. There also, you can do a conversion, which is unlimited. Basically, that's taking money that's already in an IRA or 401k, any type of taxable situation, paying the taxes today at a known rate, moving that over to your Roth, and then we let it grow tax-free from that point forward. Now, this is a very tricky thing because it does cause a lot of taxation, so I'm going to disclaimer right now that if you're going to do that, you want to get with a professional that truly understands taxes and retirement planning so that you can make sure that it'll truly benefit you and you understand all the things that come along with that. A lot of times we see folks that do conversions, and if you're over 65, you step into something that's known as IRA. Very ugly. It can be very expensive. It has to do with your Medicare Part B premium. That's something else we'll talk about later. But make sure you have a true understanding. Just don't gumshoe after watching one little video about this thing and think, oh, you got to figure it out and go do it. Always do your research first. That's what I ask you to do. Now, Roth conversions, it's real simple. A Roth IRA conversion involves a transfer of retirement assets from a traditional IRA, a SEP IRA, a SIMP IRA, any form of defined contribution plan such as a 401k, 507, 403, whatever it may be. You're going to pay that tax money and you're going to put it in a Roth IRA. And again, while the account owner has to pay the income tax on the money they convert, they will be able to make tax-free withdrawals from that account in the future. So again, you do this in time, you let it grow up, and when you retire, now you can actually set yourself up where you can tell Uncle Sam goodbye. You don't even have to file another tax return after you get your last amount in. If we don't have other taxable income, our Social Security never becomes taxable the way it was truly designed. We don't have to pay IRMA or anything like that. So you can be done paying taxes if you set yourself up right. Again, use a professional to help you look into that to make sure it'll work for you. Now, there's 10 myths about IRA contributions that I want to kind of touch on. I'm going to just hit on them lightly, but if you want more information, make sure you let us know and we'll give you this. There's 10 different things here. We're going to go one by one so you get a little bit better understanding. But these are some of those things that you hear around the water cooler and stuff that are absolutely wrong, but people believe it because so many people tell you about it. So the first one we're going to talk about is you can't contribute to a Roth after a certain age. Well, I'm here to tell you that's changed. Now, it used to be true. It used to be after you were 70 and a half, you couldn't. But back in 2019, when we put the Secure Act out there, that changed some of the rules. One of the rules that changed, it said that the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA limits evened up. In other words, traditional came down on contribution limits that says that you can contribute based off your income levels and things like that. Now, they also opened it up to say even though you're 70 and a half, if you still have qualified income, in other words, not Social Security income, not a pension income or investment income, if you're still working and earning money, you can still contribute to either a Roth or a traditional IRA. So you still have that ability now beyond 70 and a half. So that's changed. So that's one of the most common ones we have. People didn't realize that 3 years ago that law changed. So they tell us, no, I can't contribute no more. Well, I'm here to tell you can if the situation lines up for you. So make sure you understand that and look into it a little deeper if that may concern you or be close to you. Now, number two is you can't contribute if you don't have earned income. This is true if you and a spouse, neither one of you have earned income. But again, as I touched on earlier, if one of y'all still have earned income and it's enough to cover both of y'all's contribution limits, then you can contribute in both of y'all's cases. In other words, if the husband, and I'm just going to pick that out in general, is still working and the wife isn't working anymore, or if the wife's still working and the husband isn't working anymore, as long as they have enough income coming in to match the amount that they want to contribute, they still can. You just set up one in the husband's name and one in the wife's name and make those contributions separate, right? Again, traditional, possible tax break. Roth, no tax break, but it is beneficial for you in the future. So don't get caught into that. Now, you won't find a spousal IRA form again. In case you're doing that, you set up each individual account and make sure that you fund each individual account. So the next one was children can't make an IRA contribution. This is it's just a misnomer that's been out there for a long time. If a child is 15 years old and they have earned income, right, they can contribute. They may not have to pay taxes because they didn't earn enough, but they can contribute. Also, let's say that they only make $4,000 being a lifeguard during the summer or something like that. Well, if you want to, you can actually take your $4,000 and put it in for them so that they can start building. They say that just a 6% growth on $2,000 back, in 50 years will make $38,000. That's simple money. That's just one $2,000 contribution. So that's to tell you how come these kids can have easily $1 million in their Roth if they contribute all the way through. So definitely something worth looking into and getting a better understanding. Because remember, that money pays out tax-free. So that's pretty important to you. Now, number 4, you can't make a contribution if you earn too much money. That's kind of true. What it is you can't put money in and take a tax deduction on it. You can still contribute to a traditional IRA. You just can't contribute to a Roth IRA. So we put it into the traditional. We don't get the tax break, but we get to add it to it. Then what you do is you turn right around, you pay the tax on that, and you convert it into a Roth. Remember we talked about contributions and conversion. This would be a conversion. This is what they kind of nicknamed as a backdoor Roth IRA, right? So what we do is we put it in the traditional. We don't get our tax break. We don't get a tax write-off. We pay the taxes on it, and then we put it into a Roth. So it takes a little bit of planning, a little bit of understanding, but it is possible. So just because you make too much money doesn't totally lock you out of making contributions that year. It just means that you can't do it and get tax breaks, or you can't put it straight into your Roth IRA. So hopefully that'll help you out there. Now, backdoor Roth IRA contributions will always be tax-free. Now, I want to talk about this one just real lightly because it's more confusing than it is understanding. This is something that we really need to touch on one-on-one. But basically what they're saying is getting a Roth IRA via the back door, which we just explained, putting it in the traditional, paying the taxes and moving over to the Roth, right? in many situations it is tax-free. Now, the key caveats is if you have an additional IRA asset you never have to pay taxes on, say, a rollover IRA from a former employee or something like that. Well, you have what's called a IRS pro rata rule that comes into play there. And basically, if everything lines up, then you could end up paying taxes on that Roth contribution, the money from it. So be careful. Again, if you're going to do conversions or stuff like that, just check with somebody that knows tax law and investing to make sure that you get the right answer there. Don't just go down to your regular like your regular investment advisor, because if they don't have a tax background, they may not be able to give you the information. Most of them will tell you right off the bat that they're not allowed to give you tax information. So check with somebody that has that tax background to help you out there. Now, number 6 is a backdoor Roth IRA is off limits if you don't have other IRA assets. Again, that is totally false. I don't know how this got started, but who knows why, but I'm here to tell you that this is wrong. You can, as long as you have one of these plans, you can put it into a 401k, a 403b, a 507, any of these plans, and then we can make it and make the conversion out of that into a Roth. So there are ways of doing these things. We just have to make sure you understand tax law and step through it properly so you don't get yourself in trouble. Now, the next one that's kind of weird. It says a non-deductible IRA contribution is a good investment in its own right. Well, the answer there normally is yes. But with every good thing, there's always the possibility of something bad. So the first screen here is basically saying yes. If you put that money in, you get to take it out tax-free on the back end. You don't have to worry about the Rule 70, the 72 age and all that kind of stuff. This all falls in. But the problem is, in a traditional non-deductible IRA contribution, in a simple investment plan, just a vanilla taxable brokerage account, you'll have a lot more flexibility. So basically what they're telling you here is if you end up truly retiring, like they kind of fooled us into believing, and stepping into a much lower tax bracket, then it may be cheaper for you to pay taxes then on that money instead of paying the taxes today and putting it into the Roth and letting it grow and using it tax-free. I can tell you, in many years of doing people's taxes and stuff like that, it's a very rare case that we see somebody that actually steps down in tax brackets. We'll go over that a little more, but you can understand the first few years of retirement, usually you're doing more traveling and more going around, spending more money. You have the same budget, but now most of your money's coming out of qualified money, so you're having to pay taxes on that and taxes on the money you pull out to pay the taxes and so forth and so on. So usually a lot of folks will either stay in the same tax bracket, or in some cases they go up in a tax bracket. Now, I'm also here to tell you that this traditional thinking was if tax brackets kind of stayed level throughout the rest of the time. With everything that's going on with our world, with all the money that we've had to stimulate into our economy, about $10 to $12 trillion, depending upon who you're talking to, with a national deficit of over $30 trillion, I can tell you the only way the United States has to help get themselves out of all this debt is to raise taxes. Again, you know, we're on sale with taxes. Taxes all through the 70s was 70%, right? And it's been as high as 94. So if we think this little 37% is going to stay there forever, I think we're wrong. So the more stuff we can do now while taxes are lower, I think the better you're going to be. Again, seek your tax professional, find out when you're retiring, how things are lining up for you, what your budget and all that is, to make sure that this decision is truly best for you. Right? Now, number 8, if you make a wrong type of IRA contribution, you're stuck. Kind of true, but not completely. They did reclassify back in 2018. Basically, they got rid of the undo. You used to be able to put money from a Roth, traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. You could decide, oh, phooey, I didn't want to do that or whatever, and you could just undo it, put it back in. Well, they changed that. They said you can't do that anymore. But I'm here to tell you if the reason is because you have too much income limits that you're now going to be in trouble by doing that conversion. They will let you characterize the portion that will get you under that back into an IRA. So again, it's a very special tool. It's something that has to be used proper. Make sure your tax professional helps you do this and gives you the okay to do it so that you don't get in trouble. You do mess up something like this, you're falling into the highest tax penalty in the IRS tax code. Anything with qualified funds can be up to a 50% penalty. So you don't want that penalty. So make sure that if you are going to try to reclassify or recharacterize, then you make sure you use tax back to help you out with that. Now, number 9 is Roth IRA contributions are always the best. Again, as we talked about in that one, they can be. Remember, you're with the Roth IRA, you're able to take tax-free withdrawals after 59.5. Never have to pay taxes on that withdrawal and everything again. This kind of falls into that what we were talking about earlier. If your taxes are going to be lower then, and you want to take advantage of that. So again, just get with your tax professional and see where you're going to be on that one and see how that works out. Now, number 10 is a little bit different. This one says you should use your IRA contributions to invest in areas that aren't represented in your company retirement plan. Basically what they're saying is if I don't have good enough selections in my 401k or something like that, then I should take and put money into my IRA or my Roth IRA, and so I can have better selections. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. Don't let that be your factor. Why not? Because there are things within your plan that, if managed properly, can still get as good an earning. You just have to manage. Now, I'm here to tell you that a 401k or 507, whatever it may be that you have, if it's managed, in other words, you go in there at least quarterly, and you say, okay, these aren't making money and these things are, get out of the ones that aren't and put it down in the ones that are. Then you'll start making some money. They say that you could, in most cases, you should be able to double your earnings, not double your total sum. In other words, if you've been averaging about 4% in that thing, you should easily be able to get that thing up to about 8%, just by getting out of the losers and getting into the winners. It sounds pretty simple, but that's how it is. Now again, it's something that you may be able to figure out on your own. If not, I'd get with an investment advisor that's willing to talk to you. There's no money in it for them, but at least maybe they can show you and explain it to you, so that when the time comes that you're all ready to retire, then they'd have a bigger sum of funds to help you out with. So most of them will go ahead and jump out there and show you and walk you through it the first couple of times you do it to show you the best way to do that, right? So that kind of sums up what we're talking about today on IRAs and Roth IRAs and the different types of saving investment vehicles. And one other thing I want to touch on is that if you happen to have a old 401k, and this is one of the most common things we see, we have folks in today's society that jump from job to job, whether you wanted to or not. You have a 401k here and a 401k here and a 401k there. Most of them, you sit there dormant and you don't do anything with them. You're best to roll those out into a traditional IRA that you have some advice on, that you can get some management advice on, and then maybe you can start doing some Roth conversions possibly, or different things with that thing. At least get them where they start generating money. You get compounding working in your favor and stuff like that by getting it all together and getting them working in the right. So that's just a little free tidbit for you, something to think about. So just remember, we're here to try to help you out. We want to do what we can. Give us a call, stop by our website. You can make a little appointment on there. You can just kind of see a little bit more about us. If not, we want to make sure that we can make ourselves available to you in any way you want. So just remember that we're here to help you get on a path to success in retirement. We'll talk to you later. God bless.